One of the most common scriptures I've heard my fellow believers talk about when they are referencing what they experience in their journey with cancer is the passage out of Philippians chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. And here's what it says. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything that we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Now, I don't know that there is a more compelling and more beautiful experience that a person can have in the midst of dealing with cancer. Because with cancer, there comes a variety of non-negotiables. There are going to be good days and bad days. There are going to be times when you receive an encouraging report and a discouraging report. There are going to be times when you feel low and times when you feel ecstatic. There are even going to be times when your prayers will lead to miracles and prayers that will lead to seemingly an unanswered or disappointing result. In fact, sometimes you'll even have to say goodbye to people that you love who were taken by this horrible disease. All of that is a reality of the cancer journey. And because of that, when a person can experience peace, regardless of the circumstances, what can be better than that? It's the most beautiful thing we experience as believers. Because it is true. There is a kind of peace that surpasses all human understanding. It's not like something we should expect to experience. Now, as I say that, I think it's also important to clarify some things about it. Because the fact of the matter is that there are going to be times where we experience anxiety alongside of that peace. In other words, I don't think it's realistic at all for somebody to suppose that when they hear the news initially, you have cancer, that'll just fall off as though you just got news that this is what's for dinner. Or when you receive the news that it's back again, that you don't feel some tension in your stomach and that warmth behind your eyes, which produce the tears. We all experience that. In fact, it's inevitable that we do. In fact, I start to wonder about people who don't. But it's like peace and anxiety can be together. In fact, the way that I like to describe this is that the peace of Christ is kind of like background music in our life that starts to move to the foreground. Or maybe it's like the governor on an engine that keeps it from racing. So it is with the peace of Christ that keeps our heart from cycling downward to doomsday scenarios. That's the beauty of the Spirit of Christ and the peace that he provides. Now, one of the questions that I think people often have is, well, how do I experience that peace? How do I get to that place? Well, I think what it does is it provides a counterbalance to the anxiety. One of my favorite examples of this is David and his communication in the Psalms. What you'll find written often is that David will say, and he'll begin his psalm by saying, I feel lost, I feel abandoned, I feel betrayed, I feel defeated. And he'll go on for several verses about this lament. And then there will often be a transition in that psalm where he ends with this reassurance of God being his strength, God being his rock, God being his fortress or his shield. And it's almost as though he's having these competing feelings. And so he's authentic about the anxiety that he experiences. But then there's this counterbalance that he has in Christ that provides peace. And it is enough. And so that's the experience that we can have as well. Now, my suggestion for people often is that we need to have practices or processes that give us a way to make room for that peace to dwell in our hearts. It doesn't always ambush us, although I can say that it has at times done that. More often than not, it's about creating space where we do as David did, where we express our lament, we express our disappointment, we express our sadness, and then we create some space. We give God an opportunity to communicate something positive in the midst of that stress. And for many people, it's about including things like a walk in nature or a conversation with a friend or finding that place on the back porch on a nice day with a glass of wine and just saying, Lord, I am here. I need for your intervention. I need to experience that peace that's promised in Philippians chapter 4. Would you meet me in these moments? Would you give me an opportunity to affirm afresh that you are with me and that you are enough? And you'll be surprised at how often, when we are faithful on that front, to experience the peace of Christ that truly does pass all human understanding.